Yeah, I think the way you pronounce it is Itaú. So they're the largest private bank in Brazil. Um, Gave us wasn't can't can't I'm not entirely sure if the some of the numbers he was giving us was just for their portfolio or if they were more general statistics. Um, but well, one general thing is that the interest rates here are very high, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody. But um, their benchmark interest rate is around 13% right now, I think, and so farmers would pay anywhere from 16, 17, 18% depending on their risk profile. And most of the lending is done um, on what we would call very short term. I mean, they have kind of operating lines of credit that would be for a crop season, which in some cases here would be more like an 18-month period, just given the rotations. And then they do borrow money for like machinery and land purchases, but even that is relatively short term. I mean, 3, 4, 5 year terms. And we asked if there was anything like 10 or more, and no, they don't do that because of the risk. Um, and then he talked a little bit about crop insurance use here, and again, I don't know if this was a statistic specific to his to the bank's loan portfolio, but only about just under 10% of farms would carry crop insurance here, and it's much different than what we would have in the U.S. So you're actually insuring a percentage. I think he said up to 80% of the cost of production. Not sure on the details on how that's calculated, but they can't insure production or yield, and they can't insure revenue. It's all based on cost.
Interesting. What else did you learn from the banker? That is, our banking conditions. I mean, interest rates are high, but I assume they've had to deal with high interest rates for some time there. Um,
Well, I mean, the what was it, Thursday or Friday? The Fed bumped it another 25 basis points. I mean, he mentioned that they definitely are. It's a global market, so they were at one point. I think he said their benchmark was as low as six something. So I mean, they've seen interest rates double in the last few years. They're sort of back up to levels that they were maybe more historically used to. But here it's most farmers have to. Really interesting things about the tax code here that really disincentivizes farmers to hold cash, particularly at the end of the year. And so seems like they are pretty heavily reliant on borrowing to cover input costs specifically. Um, so you're doubling the interest charges they're facing on an annual basis because of those increases.
did you discuss the U.S. dollar and the yuan and what the trade deals with China mean for the bank itself, if they try to move away from the dollar for trade and towards the yuan or the real for trade?
He talked a little bit about exchange rates, just in terms of the weaker the real is, the stronger that ag exports are. So it's good for his borrowers. But yeah, he actually said that a lot of the borrowing they do, you can get a good a lower interest rate if you're willing to borrow in dollars, um, because the exchange rate uncertainty is perceived as, I mean, is much less than if you're borrowing the Brazilian currency. But that's really the only time he touched on exchange rates or trade issues.